Hey everyone, I just finished reading this book, The Salt Path, by a lady called Raynor Winn. Um, this is not one that I chose, this is one of my wife's books that she took on holiday. I didn't take anything to read on holiday. Um, and once she read it, I read it too. It's actually really, really good. Costa Book Award shortlist, and it's done quite well. Shortlisted for the Wainwright Golden Bear Book Prize. So, who's Raynor Winn and what's the book about? Raynor Winn is a woman who, when she was 50, lost her home, her business, um, everything basically, to the point where she ended up homeless. She had two grown children going to university, um, and her husband worked with her in the business, so he lost everything too. So they end up homeless, and this is shortly after they learned that her husband has a terminal illness, CBD, which is basically a neurodegenerative disease. So he's expected to eventually not be able to swallow, breathe, or anything, and just choke to death on his own spit. The doctor tells him to rest, take it easy, don't walk too far, don't plan too far ahead, etc., etc. But that's not what they do. So when the bailiffs eventually arrive at their house, and the way they lose it is one of those stories, and it's a real story which just shows you that, when people look at homeless people, they think, oh, it's all their own fault. They're all addicts. They're all druggies. They're all this and that. It can happen to anybody. These were people, middle-aged people with a home, with a business that they'd built for 30 years to create and everything, and they were basically screwed over by somebody. Bang. They would have actually got off, but um, because it went to a court case, and the evidence which exonerated them and showed that the person who was taking them to court and claiming that they owed him money and everything was actually lying. But by that time, the case had gone on for a long time, and the evidence, because they couldn't afford lawyers, so the evidence was not submitted. Even though it would have exonerated them, it was not submitted following the proper procedure. So there you go, you're fucked. You didn't follow our procedures, you can't afford a lawyer, so what, you're screwed. They end up homeless. So what do they decide to do? They decide to go on a 630-mile walk because there's nothing else they can do. It's quite an uplifting story. They survive, and then you know, do they stay homeless forever? No, because obviously Raynor Winn's a writer now, so she's got an income. The husband ends up actually doing something as well, and it's a story about. I guess it's a love story about how they stick together for it. Or it's a true story, so it's nice. It's not everything ends up happy and nice and Hollywood and all that bullshit. I think there's actually a lot more to learn from. There's a lot of depth in things like sadness. You can learn from it. You can reflect on it. It's not a sad story. It's quite a harsh story about what it's like to be homeless and how people react to that. And homelessness is something that's always bothered me. I don't think there should be any homelessness. I can't remember who said it. It was a very good quote. It was, if we can find the money to kill people, we can find the money to ensure everybody is fed, healthy, etc. It was some Kevin, and there's some, I'm thinking Ken Livingstone, but I don't think it was him. Tony Banks, there you go. A leftist MP. And isn't it funny how after all these decades of being raised, certainly a lot of people I know were raised to think that the left is, socialism is mad and it doesn't work. The left is irresponsible with money, and the only way for a fair society is capitalism and everything. Well, look where that's got us. Conservatives have absolutely fucked everybody whilst lining their own pockets, and these two morons, Richie Sunak and what's the other idiot called? Liz Truss. We're going to change university start dates. We're going to introduce tax cuts. But we need to raise taxes, not on the people who don't have a choice, not the people who pay PAYE, not the employees, the suckers, um, you know, the hard-working people. Not for them. You need to tax those people who don't pay any tax and whose businesses are bailed out by taxpayers. But this is a different discussion. Anybody can end up homeless, which becomes very evident from this book. But what's beautiful is how they get through it, how they go through the struggle. These two elderly people, one with a neurodegenerative disease, and they come out on the other end. It's while I was reading it, I didn't enjoy it a great deal. Maybe I just don't like her writing style so much. But the story, when thought of as a whole, it's really quite beautiful, quite inspiring. Actually made me want to do a long walk. It made me want to do the coastal walk. So I know one of the people who watches this video, I once convinced him to go on a 16-mile walk, which is nothing, but it was through the night. It was great fun. So coastal walk if you're up for it. Let's do it. Um, yeah, sleeping on beaches, living on no money, and how it's all possible. And it's a story of the human will. It's a story of how you can overcome. It's a story of how people look down on, and they think there's something wrong if some of these things happen to you, but it can happen to anybody. And especially now, if you think about the cost of living crisis in the UK, one missed paycheck and you could be absolutely screwed. There was a story I read once in I can't remember which magazine it was, but a guy who'd been working. He did the music for one of these big American shows, or he was a writer for one of these big American shows, 300 grand a year. Then he lost his job, and his family were like, "Bye then, okay, we're not interested in you anymore." And it's a story of how he went from that to basically going back to the neighborhood where he used to live because he knew people were rich, siphoning off electricity and water just to stay alive. It was disgusting, absolutely disgusting. Let me read you the back of this book. A beautiful, thoughtful, lyrical story of homelessness, human strength and endurance. That's from The Guardian. And here's the blurb, I guess they call it. Just days after Raynor Winn learned that Moth, her husband of 32 years, was terminally ill, they lost their home and livelihood. With nothing left and little time, they impulsively decided to walk the 630-mile southwest coast path from Somerset to Devon via Devon and Cornwall. Living wild and free, at the mercy of the sea and sky, they discovered a new liberating existence. But what would they find at the journey's end? From The Independent, an astonishing narrative of two people dragging themselves from the depths of despair along some of the most dramatic landscapes in the country, looking for a solution to their problems and ultimately finding themselves. From The Times, the most inspirational book this year conveys the human capacity for endurance and the regenerative power of nature. A remarkable and redemptive journey, The Financial Times. So a good spread there from The Guardian to The Financial Times, The Times, The Independent. A lot of people obviously enjoyed this book. And she was asked to write a follow-up, so she got a book deal out of it, so good for her. Only because I didn't really enjoy the style, I'm going to give it 6 out of 10, which seems like really harsh. I'm sure I've given most books 7 out of 10 or 8 out of 10. 6 out of 10, but I do suggest you read it. It's less than 300 pages. The pages are a bit messed up because it got dropped in the sea. So 274 pages. No, 272. 274 including the acknowledgements. I think my wife's going to buy the follow-up. If you enjoyed Salt Path, you will love the Wild Silence, which is her second book. So she'll probably buy it. I'll probably read it. I'll review it too. But yeah, a new writer I didn't know about, and a fairly new writer in terms of her career as well. I think this is in the back. This is her first book. So she became a writer in her 50s, which is nice because people don't really retire anymore. So if you're thinking, is it too late for me to do something? And if you want to be a writer or go to university or start a new career, maybe it's not, because she did it. So, good book, 6 out of 10. I'm going to up that to a 7 out of 10. Raynor Winn, the Sunday Times bestseller, The Salt Path.